Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I hope you collided in a quantum way with a few people over the coffee break. We now have a panel on finance, leveraging quantum and AI for peak performance in financial services. When Ian Stewart, the CEO of HSBC UK, agreed to chair this, HSBC was the second best quantum bank in the world. Over the last few weeks, it's probably overtaken JP Morgan. Not a bad place to be. So Ian, would you come up to chair your panel? We've got Carmen Recio Valcarce, Director of Quantum Computing at Moody's, Carolina Dolan Chandler, CTO of Globant, Dino Cataldo Dell'Accio, Deputy Chief Executive of Pensions at the UN Joint Staff Pension Fund, which is gigantic, and rather than Fern Watson, who's been taken ill with that throat bug that everybody seems to have, Charlie Markham from the FCA.
Well, Karina, thank you very much, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for turning up this afternoon. It's always reassuring to see an audience when you do one of these events. The panel's been introduced to you, so I won't go through that again, but let me just try and position this. So we're going to cover, I think, a lot of bases this afternoon. We've got a cutting-edge tech business, we have a regulator, we've got a very large pension fund, and a ratings agency. So we are going to cover a lot of bases. All are using AI, and all are using quantum as well. And I will make sure we hear from each of them, and they can give you their perspective on what is happening in the industry, and maybe give you some inspiration along the way as well. So turning to our audience for a minute, having got your heads round AI, Gen AI, agentic AI, the 7 C's of AI, now we move into quantum. And as I tell my people, what does AI and quantum mean to me? Very simple, it makes machines think and learn like humans. And that's the only way I can sum it up. And Karina did say to me, keep this plain English this afternoon, don't get into jargon. So that's my plain English for you. Now, quantum can do so much, and if I get time later, I don't mind going into a little bit of detail on what we've been doing with IBM. But it's not about me, it's about the panel today. But one of the things we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, and you're all experts in this room, but we were talking about autonomous vehicles and how exciting that is for the wider industry. But did you know that there'll be autonomous vehicles on the streets of London on the second half of 2027? So you have been warned, don't step out in those pavements, okay? So much to consider and digest, and it's all about how do we get peak performance in financial services. And there's maybe 1 or 2 people in the room. We'd love to hear from you later if you think it's all just hype. I'm probably talking to the converted in here, so we'll maybe not get that question, but 1 or 2, maybe just think it's all hype. I do not think it's hype, by the way, but 1 or 2 might. But let's get started. I want the panel to introduce themselves a little bit more to you. I've told them what the first question is, which is all about the next, I would say, 3 years. I was told some months ago by somebody, you can't think of a 5-year plan anymore. It's all about 3 years. That's as far as our minds can take us. But how do you see quantum reshaping the financial services sector over the next 3 to 5 years? So I'll just go left to right.
Thank you for the question. So I think this is the question that everyone is asking. And I think when you investigate the applications of an emerging technology, you need to look at the risk and at the opportunity that new technology may bring. So the risk was discussed in the previous panel. We know that quantum poses a threat to cybersecurity, and hopefully this will make us start rethinking about cryptography management and enhance how we manage cryptography. Build robust crypto inventories, and becoming crypto agile, because as it was mentioned, we had a secure way to encrypt our data and our communications that lasted for 70 years, but that's not going to happen again. So we need to become crypto agile from now on. Hopefully Quantum will push us to adopt crypto agility and to become better at managing cryptography. And then on the opportunity side, this is what we are researching at Moody's in the case of quantitative risk, and for all the use cases that can help our customers, banks, insurers, corporates and governments, and asset managers. We serve all these sectors. And for this, when you think about what are the applications that may bring value to our sector in quantum computing, I'd like the room to think about quantum computing as a completely new way of problem solving. And I recommend IBM's article on the fast Fourier transform, which anniversary was this year. I think that article explains exactly how you need to think about quantum computing. But to summarize it, basically you need to think about how to redefine the way you represent or model your problems and the way you solve them. So it's not comparable to adding more processors or to adding more classical computing resources, as we may do if we want to enhance the classical way we solve our problems. You need to redefine, it's a shift that makes you redefine how you represent the problems from scratch. So it's a paradigm shift. And we see that there is potential in the areas of optimization and simulation mainly, and we are waiting to see empirical evidence of how quantum can help in machine learning. But there are use cases that have very high potential in these three areas, and most of these are long-term, so longer than 3 to 5 years, but in the meantime, we think there's also potential on exploring how to apply quantum-inspired techniques that are inspired by the study of quantum many-body physics, but run in classical hardware. So this means that these techniques can be solving problems today.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you.
Carolina.
I'll go short.
Short, go short, yeah.
So honestly, on the next 3 to 5 years, I see very tactical changes that are going to happen to the financial institutions. They're going to adopt AI to improve whatever they need to improve. They're going to adopt quantum as fast as we can, as fast as the technology itself enables it. I'm going to complement that with what do I hope? Because you didn't ask for that, but I think it's a good angle. One of the things I hope we get is we get to challenge things that might be a little bit out from what you start thinking when you're thinking financial and business. How are we going to help other countries get more financial inclusion? How are we going to help regulations accompany innovation instead of stifling it? How are financial institutions going to be the leaders in shaping all of that as we go ahead?
Yeah, very interesting. And Dino from the pension fund side?
Thank you, Ian. So I'm going to respond with my practical, real-world experience. So I would say in 3 words, the issue is convergence, demonstrability, and governance. So very, very brief context about myself. I'm on the 8th day of being the Deputy Chief Executive of the UN Pension Fund. I've been with the United Nations for 25 years. Prior 8 years, I was the Chief Information Officer of the UN Pension Fund, and prior, I was the Chief IT Auditor of the UN. So I'm giving this detail just to explain my context. As a CIO in 2021, I designed and implemented a digital identity solution for proof of life in order to confirm that the 84,000 individuals that are receiving payment every month by the UN, that are living in more than 192 countries around the world, are still alive. And you can expect that the governing body of the UN, composed of representatives of 193 countries, have been extremely demanding and questioning the UN Pension Fund for 75 years. That's why when I became CIO, I was handed this issue, this challenge, asking how can you demonstrate there is no fraud in a process that was for 75 years handled with a piece of paper sent by the pension fund to these 84,000 individuals using 192 postal services, asking them to sign and return it to the same mean. So proving a negative is impossible. I designed an application that proves a positive, using biometrics, facial recognition, using blockchain to create an immutable record of transaction, using GPS, geolocalization. In 2022, 2023, AI became mass adoption. And of course, I started to become concerned as an unreformed auditor about this new threat. the risk of deepfakes. So we embedded AI in the biometric algorithm in order to fight the misuse of AI with the good use of AI, fighting AI with AI. So go in front of the 193 countries and giving assurance, that was kept me awake during the night. How can I demonstrate that a digital identity solution based on blockchain, therefore vulnerable to post-quantum computing, using AI for biometric and facial recognition, can be considered by my governing body that ultimately approve and fund the project to be reliable, to be trustworthy, to be secure. So my answer as a former auditor was to adopt an ISO standard, an international standard, 42001, to transparently demonstrate how AI works, basically opening and explaining the black box. And this brings to the concept of, one, quantum and AI are not used in isolation, are most often needed to be interfaced with legacy system, but also with themselves. And second of all, you need to have the ability to govern this system. Thank you.
I think we maybe have to come back to that question of interacting with legacy systems. Okay, as a bank, that is really challenging. But before that, let's go to Charlie, who stepped in late. Charlie, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, very quickly from my side, I think first and foremost, let's think 3 years from now and where we are in the NCSC guidelines. So everyone will have finished their planning for their migration to PQC. And we shouldn't really underestimate how much of a step change that's going to be for us, but also how much of an opportunity it is for this sector to rethink its approach to cryptographic management and cybersecurity. And I've heard this framed as a risk a lot, but I really want to just say to the audience today that this is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to build resilience, and it's something we should get excited about. And then when I think about 3 years in actual use cases and applications from now, it's a really interesting time, because if we say 5 or 10 years, we can say, well, we're going to solve stochastic modeling, we're going to have quantum machine learning. I think that's likely to not be the case in 3 years. I think what we'll see is we'll see a shift in some of the questions being asked by financial services firms. It'll be less about, can we do this and how do we do this? And I expect us to focus a lot more on the integration of quantum more broadly across the stack. So more focus on how we actually compile, what subroutines are run on QPU versus GPU, but also the development of algorithms and applications. So in that sense, I don't think it will really transform what we're doing, but I hope that it will transform the conversations that we're having to get to using quantum in financial services.
Okay, thank you very much. Just say on the questions coming in, we've got a few in. We will try and get to these. Best if they're not anonymous, because then I can't come to you, okay? So a little name and address would be handy, thank you. Come back to that. Carolina, I want to come back to you because I've got a question here I think a lot of the audience will be interested in, and that is, what are financial institutions doing today? I mean, I could talk about some of the things we're doing, but you're seeing a much wider spectrum. Do you sense there's energy going into quantum? Are they getting excited about it? Or are they planning?
I'm going to focus more on AI than quantum, because our realm is, for context, we're an IT provider, so an IT services company. We work with a lot of companies. Quantum is something we're working on, but it's not something our clients are demanding from us yet, because they're still setting up their expectations, what they need, et cetera. We're preparing, but that's different. What we see financial institutions doing with AI is all over the place, genuinely. You have some companies who have taken a good understanding of the technology and are doing everything that was said in the panels today. Out with the experimentation, focusing on things that are going to drive business value, focusing on things where they can measure the ROI, where they can see the value that's coming, and they're implementing those. There are others that are just playing with the technology still and trying to force the worst possible thing that you can force, which is forcing ChatGPT because there is a mandate from the board to use some sort of Gen AI. And honestly, that has only created chaos, a lot of chaos.
It's good though. It is good.
I mean, there's good and bad, because once people, you have two problems. If people learn to do things the wrong way, it's very hard to teach them to do it the right way. I mean, if you learn to ski with the wrong position, it's very hard to fix it. The second thing is, if they don't get the expected results, the change management that you have to do after that to get them to adopt it is like double the effort. So it's good and bad. But we separate it in three, basically. We see that financial institutions are either invested in AI for tech, and I'll explain what I mean by that. AI for business and AI for experience. AI for tech is where we exist mostly, which is we've had Jensen Huang come out and say software developers are not needed anymore. That's not true. That's never going to be true. What's going to happen is the analogy that someone did earlier today. We used to have how many architects and engineers to build a building like this. Now you need a lot less because you have tools that help you. So that's what's going to happen in our industry. Right now, to build a system, a software, you need a lot of people. As AI progresses, you're going to need less. And you guys even did that recently, like your global CIO, just posted about how they used AI to turn the Figmas into actual code for the application, right? So this is the first one, which is AI for tech. For us, it's the low-hanging fruit. For a lot of people, it's like speaking alien language, but it makes sense. AI for business is the one that is easily transferable. I figure out what my processes are. I start figuring out how I can optimize them, how I can make them better, where can AI help me. There always needs to be a human in the loop, but that's the easy one. The one that I wish we could see faster, and we're not there yet for a lot of reasons, is AI for experiences. We work with lots of companies. One of the ones we work with is Clippers, the LA Clippers. We've built a stadium for them. It's magical. You go to the stadium, you don't even have to carry the ticket. You just walk in, face recognition, mwah. You want to buy something, lovely. A girl came into the stadium. She was like, that was it? And I was sneaking, and I'm a woman, so I could do it. So I went close to her, and I said, yes, Jane, this was it. I know you entered, and I have your ticket. Boom. What that creates is a resonance between her and the stadium and the experience and the show that she had gone to see that is going to be in her brain forever. Forever. She's never going to forget that moment because that was a moment of pure magic. Tell me the last time a financial institution gave you pure magic. Anyone? I mean, we're all happy if we get to the app and we manage to do everything we wanted to do.
Harsh.
No, now it's better. But let me tell you, I'm an Argentinian that lives in Miami, have lived in Miami for many years. Every bank application in Argentina up until a year ago asked me to go to a physical location to get the app to work. So experience for people, for the end customers, for your employees, that's where I would love and I would think the focus should be within reason. This is not an industry that can do what the Clippers do. Because if the Clippers redeem the wrong person's ticket, we're fine. It's okay, we'll sit you somewhere else. If you guys give my money to someone else because you recognize the wrong person, we're going to be in trouble.
Okay, this is turning into a lecture for the banking industry here, so I'm going to move on swiftly. Charlie, I'm going to come to you in a second, okay? But I just want to take one question here. One comment, which is good. I thought it was really good. About talking in plain language to help people understand it. We need to simplify. Andrew Turner, I agree, and we will try and keep this simple. So I had a question, Charlie, regarding the FCA. How will you regulate in the brave new world? Will you help the financial services industry advance? Come back to that in a second, because somebody else has asked, how will a regulator like UK FCA keep up and get ahead of AI and quantum applications to financial services to protect consumers?
Super. I'll try and answer both of those, no pressure. Essentially, the way that I think about this is for a long time, people have seen regulators at the end of the innovation journey, and we're making a proactive effort to actually be there and be along that whole innovation journey and not that roadblock at the end of it. In terms of what we're actually doing in quantum computing and why that's important, is it is far too early for us to be thinking about or even talking about formal regulation, right? We have no live market deployments yet. This is very much in an exploratory stage. So what are some of the things that we can do to actually stay ahead or keep pace, as the question said, or as I like to frame it, support and facilitate that innovation? Well, broadly, we've done this in 3 different ways. The first one is all about convening. So convening events a bit like the one that we're in today. The FCA 2 weeks ago, hosted our first event on quantum computing in finance, looking at the risks and opportunities. And we brought a whole host of stakeholders together to actually provide a series of talks, panel discussions, keynotes, to provide that unique insight that we all need to move forward, and we as the FCA need to keep abreast of the latest developments there. We also collaborate, so this goes to the point of being part of that ecosystem, and we have a long, long history in my team of doing this. And I say a long history, the team's only been around for about 3 years, but in those 3 years, it's everything that we've done, sorry. So we've had collaborations with the World Economic Forum, with the National Quantum Computing Center, with the Quantum Software Lab, a number of different industry partners as well who contributed to help us write our research. So it's really making sure that we're here, and we're having the conversations, that we're taking the learnings, and we're actually disseminating those across the FCA as well. And the final point really is about that dissemination, right? So recently we've just published our first research into quantum computing applications, in financial services. And this research paper was co-written between ourselves, the Quantum Software Lab, the National Quantum Computing Center, who you've heard from today, to really explore what the opportunity for quantum advantage is in financial services, and to provide that back to the ecosystem. So it starts by looking at some classical problem domains, some areas that I'm sure we'll all be very familiar with. It looks at the limitations, the potential for quantum advantage, and then also what the industry sentiment currently is. I mean, we hear a lot of noise, but how are industry players actually feeling about these use cases? Do they think it's a false dawn? Do they think that this is what they want to be focusing on near term? And then finally, those barriers and some considerations into building quantum readiness. And that final point is really important because it recognizes that we're a whole ecosystem here, with a number of different stakeholders, and what we all do individually supports how we can move further in actually adopting quantum. So I hope that helps to answer the question from the audience.
Yeah, I'm under no illusions. Regulators around the world, especially in the UK, we have to look after consumers. We've gone through so many issues in the last few years. To go backwards on that would be a retrograde step. So I'm under no illusions on that one either. I do want just to go back to Dino, because you were talking earlier. So a few days in the role, customers, pension holders all over the world. Just build a little bit on the last answer. How are you going to protect those people that you are interacting with? Because a lot of pensioners, and we've got a lot of pensioners, always worried that bad actors get in the way. So what assurances can you give the United Nations pensioners that are going to be well looked after?
Thank you very much for that question. And indeed, when Carolina was mentioning about accessing a stadium with the biometrics, well, it was a very pain point for me when I was designing the solution, along with, of course, with my subject matter expert. And the point is that when people, especially if you think about the demographics of pensioners, you are dealing with certain parts of the population that is not really digitally savvy. When they read or heard that we're using biometrics, they were extremely scared, and they started to send questions, calling our call center, approaching our CEO, and so forth and so on. The point is that in designing the application, we made sure that the biometric profile that's captured only during the onboarding process was stored only on the device of the user. So we had to demonstrate and confirm, and again, as an ARM reform auditor, prove evidence, corroborating evidence of those by, for example, achieving ISO certification 27001 and 27701. Apologies for the numbers, but basically are the ISO standard in information security management system and personal identifiable information management system. So we demonstrated that their biometric data, their PII, was never stored nor transmitted anywhere. That the blockchain never contained any PII on the blockchain itself. So we, of course, included public addresses, apologies for making reference to technical terms, but basically we had to demonstrate that although we are recording transaction on a private blockchain, still, although private, at any time, we do not record PII on the blockchain itself. However, as alluded to before, quantum started to create a threat to the blockchain itself for what was explained very clearly by my esteemed previous panelists, to the digital signature as well as the hashing mechanism of the transaction itself. And on the other side, AI started to create a threat on the potential deepfakes and therefore the reliability of biometrics. So how did we provide assurance? How did we demonstrate protection? By, as I alluded to before, opening and explaining the black box. It's a very hard work, and you may find something that you give for granted, but when you have to document, it becomes challenging. But it was a necessary step that we took in order to then be independently audited and found to be in conformance or in compliance with certain standard, demonstrating that the data was indeed, especially PII, was indeed secure.
Thank you. And I'm going to move back to Moody's, and I think it's really important for a lot of people in the room, because if you're in financial services, getting the right rating is really, really important. And so we spend a lot of time with ratings agencies, etc. So Cameron, can you just help us gauge a picture of what Moody's will be looking for 3 or 4 years from now? So let me try and explain that. Will you be expecting us to adopt the new technology? Are we in danger of being left behind if we don't adopt it? And is that going to impact our rating?
Well, first, I would like to clarify that I'm not exactly part of the rating agency. I'm part of Moody's Analytics that does products for risk management.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so Moody's as a whole has this part of Moody's rating, and would be very interesting to know what they hear, but
okay.
Just wanted to make this clarification. Basically, I think it depends a lot on the company. There are companies that have the resources to fund innovation activities and to make their own models in AI, train the models, even research new use cases, and same applies to quantum, but others want to rely in their providers. So we, among our multiple customers, we see both cases. And I think it's very important for every industry to start thinking about what are the use cases that they have for both technologies. I can talk more about quantum, because usually, at the beginning, the knowledge is in academia. Researchers are developing algorithms. They are thinking about how to use this new powerful computing paradigm, but they are probably not tackling the same problems that we face in production. So bridging the gap between industry and academia, it's very important. And actually, when we try to do this work in-house, sometimes we face the problem that we cannot publish what we are going to do. It's not really a problem, but because you would be revealing IP. So who's going to work on your IP-protected models if you don't have an in-house team looking at those?
Yeah, I'm very alive to that. I think that will be what happens. So we will have to invest more and more, which we will anyway. Just before I go to the questions, and a little bit of humor for this bit. I was told that nothing will come through in the iPad. How wrong was I? So I will try and get to your questions just in a few minutes. There's a lot of questions here.
That means we're interested.
That means we're interested.
That's good.
Well, we're keeping it lively. So one of the questions I think, and I really think the panel should give a view on this, is that what I hear a lot with AI and as we move to quantum is not unconscious bias, but conscious bias. So are we going to take people out of financial services by using very sophisticated models going forward? I'm quite nervous about that, so I would love to hear what others are thinking. I'm quite happy whoever wants to go first. Is anybody bursting to get an answer on this one? Dino, yeah, please.
Maybe I can try to take a stab at it. So for me, one of the distinguishing factors in dealing with this emerging technology, and especially AI, is that we tend to, I think it's also an instinct, a human instinct, to, of course, and as a former auditor, always look at what can go wrong. What is the risk? What is the potential negative impact? However, and again, apologies for repeating myself, the beauty of adopting certain criteria, such as the ISO standard. So again, as an auditor, I continue to, as a former auditor, continue to work with the 5C. Criteria, condition, cause, consequence, and corrective action, i.e. audit recommendation. What happened is, most of the time, especially when you started to become a CEO, You are presented with a problem. We basically say, focus on the condition, jump to the solution, jump to the corrective action. So we very rarely take the time to actually break down the problem and say, okay, we are looking at this problem within which context? What are the criteria? If you're in defense, you're using certain criteria. If you're in finance, you may be using different criteria. If you are in digital health, other different criteria. So my point is, let's look at the criteria. Let's follow the analysis, condition, cause, consequence, and corrective action. And then, especially, let's look at the potential unintended consequences. And one of the beauty, from my side, of the ISO standard 42001 on the responsible ethical use of AI is that not only focuses on risk assessment, but focuses on impact assessment. And although they may seem to be a synonym, they are not. When you're looking at risk, you're looking at potential negative impact. When you're looking at impact, you are looking at both positive and negative. So I think that may open the door to try to identify not only what can go wrong, but also what can go good.
Okay. If I can expand on it, I don't think it's a problem we have a solution for yet. I think we're all aware of the fact that the more we add AI to everything that we do for risk management in banks, et cetera, we risk expanding the profiling that is already there, that it's getting certain populations into very bad situations because it becomes harder and harder to get out. I think you said conscious. I think that's the key. We need to do an active effort towards implementing the guardrails that we know those systems need to have. And at least so far, and probably for the foreseeable future, there always needs to be human interaction. There always needs to be a human in the middle. The moment we take the human out of the loop, it's all going to break down. And that's to our detriment as a society, as an institution, as everything. So I think but I don't think we have an answer. That's the problem. That's one of the challenges that is still out there. And they were talking earlier about the divide, the divide that's going to exist in quantum, the divide that exists in AI. And it exists on every single level because it exists in terms of what opportunities do companies have? Okay, small businesses here end up acquired by American companies because they have more money. That's already an issue. But what about the kids, my friends in Argentina, whose kids learn in a traditional environment and they don't have computers and they don't have access to AI? All of that divide is generating something that is going to, pardon my French, bite us in the ass in 20 years. Yeah. And we need to be aware and doing active and conscious things to stop that.
And look, that's the same today. I mean, AI is pretty sophisticated today. You could leave a lot of people behind, and that would be a big failing on society. So we just can't allow that to happen. Okay, I'm going to go to some of the questions. Folks, there's a lot of people voting up the questions on HSBC. I will take that right at the end, okay? It might be short, but I'll give you the answer right at the end. But there's some really good questions come in. So there's a great one here about, is the government doing enough? So let's just talk about, this is a bit unfair because, probably coming to a friend at the end. No, governments in general. I think let's talk about governments in general. Yep. Are they doing enough to promote quantum and explain quantum?
So let me start by saying I think a lot of international governments look at what the UK has done and continues to do with its national quantum technology program. We have very much been seen as the leaders in this space. And when I say government, I'm not talking about us as regulators. I am talking about HMG. That National Quantum Technologies Program has obviously been refunded for an additional 10 years. We have seen extra funding come out of the industrial strategy. I think it's about 670 million for quantum compute. We have the Spark program. We have Innovate UK grants. I think from our perspective, we see government doing a lot and doing a lot well. And it's not really for me to comment on what more they can do, seeing as I'm not an end user nor a quantum computing company. But I think we should be really impressed with the progress that we're making, that the focus that we have on our missions to drive us forward, and the fact that other countries do look at what we've done with our National Quantum Technology Program and seek to emanate parts of that.
Okay, can I move to talent? We always talk about skills and the lack of skills. So I know that our own recruitment over the last few years, suddenly you need engineers. So we hire tens of thousands of engineers. So the question is, and so Eric Walker-Rawson, thank you. Is there enough quantum and AI talent in the UK to meet growing company demands, and will this lead to talent shortages, wars in the future, as in talent wars? Come on, it impacts all of you. Yeah.
I mean, I'll go first. I think specifically thinking about quantum talent, the first thing that we immediately think about are people taking PhDs, people with actual quantum computing skills. And that's an incredibly finite amount, especially once we start thinking about industry applications, because the intersection of skills and knowledge that you need, highly specialized in computer science, highly specialized in quantum or theoretical physics, and then deep domain knowledge, we already do have, I guess, a bit of a talent gap there. I would think about this more broadly, though, and how quantum will actually advance. And I think we've had similar conversations about AI. We don't all need to be software engineers. We don't all need to be quantum computer scientists. But we do need to start thinking about the level of awareness or literacy, I would say, when it comes to especially quantum, that we need across our organizations to make sure that we're engaging more broadly on it.
The answer is no, because we don't have enough talent worldwide, so I'm sure we don't have enough talent here. But it doesn't have to do with, as he said, we don't all need to be computer scientists. We don't, and that's fantastic, because seriously, it would take a lot of time. But we do need people to be prompt engineers today. Everybody, even you sitting there, you need to be a prompt engineer, chatting with ChatGPT or whatever you use, the proper way to get the best out of it. And we're learning by stumbling into the problems, because there's no course, because this happened so fast. So there's no way we have enough talent. But I think for financial institutions, there's an added challenge that I want to bring to a table, which is 50 years ago, working for a bank was fantastic. It was awesome. It was where you wanted to be. You had job security. They had an attraction that was amazing. Today, you go to work to a bank as an engineer, and you have to deal with legacy systems, and you're not allowed to do anything, and you cannot work with AI, and you cannot play with the latest model. How are financial institutions going to make themselves attractive to that talent? Because we know we don't have enough. Then how are you going to make yourself a good place for people like me, or people like any of the computer people that we have in this world want to go to you guys? Because that's, I think, a bigger threat even.
So old systems are definitely a challenge. I mean, every bank, every old traditional bank will have systems going back to the 70s and the 80s. And the worry is that you do something with those and the whole system falls over. But it's not quite as bad as Carolina envisages. It's quite an exciting environment. I need to go on my recruitment drive here, okay? All you budding stars out there, come and join us. We've got an exciting future.
It's actually pretty good, and we are using AI to modernize COBOL systems, precisely in banks. So we're doing that to do that in financial institutions. Financial institutions are getting far better. But it's still, the new generations have a different way of seeing things. They have to have a purpose. They have to have a reason why they want to work there. It's completely different to how many of us here sitting in this room grew up. And we need to understand how to speak their language, because it's different.
Yeah, I'd love to pick off the question on defense, but I don't think that's really fair on this panel. We don't have defense experts, but if I get a chance at the end, I might just touch on it for a second as well. I just want to go back to another question that came in. Bear with me 1 second. Financial services board members, how can they get up the curve on this? So the boards are hugely important in any business. You know, the average non-exec director is of a certain age. So what are you doing with your boards? I don't know what it's like in Moody's, but maybe go there first. Are you seeing a challenge at the board level for your ideas, or are you getting a lot of great support to push forward?
Well, what I can say is that we needed to explain what quantum is up to C-level executives. Yeah. So I had a very good mentor who was the one who convinced Moody's in the first place to invest in quantum computing. Okay. That's Sergio Cago. He's not in Moody's anymore. But basically, he he told me that you need to sell a dream because it's a very technical field, right? With quantum, there's an idiom in English that it's not rocket science. Now people are saying it's not quantum mechanics, and this is what you need to explain to the CEO, right? Yeah. So we've worked a lot to try to translate it into business advantage, because what you're really looking for is not to explain technically why this is better, but how can you benefit from it? How can we make better products for our customers? How can this disrupt us? Or what's the risk of not doing this? Can we be left behind? And I think that with quantum, we have a very recent success story, right? That it's the story of AI adoption. So you can find similarities, because AI seems to be new, but actually the first time artificial intelligence term was coined, it was in 1956. And it's been mentioned that it has only become mainstream a couple of years ago. So it's taken almost 70 years. Quantum was first coined in 1981, so we still have some room for for it to become mainstream. And if we were patient enough to explore AI until it became mainstream and prepare organizations so that they were able to jump into the wave of AI, this is what we need to do for quantum. So this metaphor, I think it works very well for them to understand that you need to prepare before actually being able to leverage it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a challenge taking all your boards with you in the next few years, because I think we'll all be going looking for huge investment, and people want to see a return on that investment, and this may not deliver that. That leads me on. I think we should have a quick fire round question here. You know, what, and I'll start with you, Charlie, but I mean, what do you think is the biggest misconception for executives right now on quantum? There is the obvious one, which is, look, it's never going to affect us. But I mean, what is the big misconception for executives today?
So I think the biggest one I probably see or hear is quantum computers are more powerful than classical computers. And I think everyone will be fairly familiar with this. And it speaks actually to a fundamental misunderstanding that we're talking about a different technology that has a different underlying approach to computation. And it also makes conversations very challenging when we start talking about what quantum computers can and can't do, if we're starting with the perception that these are faster, better, stronger processors. So probably that one.
Dino?
Yeah, maybe just to complement what Charlie said. I think that, and even myself, at the very beginning, I am very focused on convergence of emerging technologies. So I was very happy because here I was using blockchain, deterministic technology, and AI, probabilistic technology. I said, perfect. The complement of the both of them will give me a good result. And here comes quantum. And I think the misconception is quantum is often considered one technology. However, quantum as a superpower can be both deterministic as well as probabilistic. If we're talking about, was mentioned before by my previous panelists, Shor algorithms, Grover's algorithm, they are algorithms. They can be explained in a deterministic way. But if we're talking about using quantum for measurement, well, the superposition property of quantum is such that it provides actually real randomness, entropy, full entropy. So I think that if we start looking at this duality of the quantum technology, we may start appreciating the benefit that can derive from it.
Okay, well said. Carolina.
I'll give you this comes from actual conversations with C-levels and investors, amazingly, which is that only Gen AI matters. No. Under no circumstances. When it comes to AI, quantum is different. There's a lot of illiteracy in terms of what AI means and what it means to have your own model, different models, what Gen AI is versus a visual model that is processing images on a roller coaster or things like that. And it surprised me that the people in charge, the people who have the money and who are making the decisions, there were far more than I thought that had that very big misconception.
Okay.
I agree with what Charlie said, and I think the only thing I'm going to add is a metaphor. So the misconception is that classical computing is a car, And quantum is the Ferrari of cars, but it's not. It's a submarine.
It's a submarine, right? Okay.
So it may
Completely
not
different.
bring us faster if we take the same road, but it's going to enable us to explore whole other worlds.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little story here. I started in banking in 1979. Most of you weren't born then, but in 1979, it was quite an interesting time because in 1980, the cash machine arrived. And I remember having to vote for strike action because it was the end of banking at that point. We will evolve. We will definitely evolve. So don't lose sight of that. It's all about evolution and how quickly you can evolve. I've got 1 minute and 40 seconds, which I've timed to perfection because it means I can't take dozens of questions on our announcement earlier this week. Before I go there, let me just touch on defense for 10 seconds. The defense industry is completely changing at this time, and you can see that over what's happened in the last few years. But if you think it's still the days of warships, etc., I mean, it's all changing. So technology is playing a huge part in defense, and you can see what the government's just done by earmarking a huge chunk of the defense budget for innovation, pure innovation. I think that's very exciting. We'll get a lot of dual use out of that, but these are exciting times. On the IBM HSBC announcement earlier this week, I have to say I've been really surprised by the amount of press media uptake that it's had. But good timing, it's not planned. I met the IBM team on Monday evening. So we've been working on that specific piece of work for 3 years. And I don't have time to go into detail. I don't understand all the detail behind it, but we got a 34% benefit on a very technical part of banking, which just consumes data. And I was pleasantly surprised. I think 34%, I was just saying to Charlie before we come on, that seems quite material to me. That's a material saving in time and energy, and it's accurate. So well done to the team at IBM as well. They've been great partners in this, but it's 3 years of intense work. But it proves the concept. So we are excited about it. We're pleased that we got something out, but we didn't expect the level of uptake that we've got. But we'll take the PR because it's been pretty tough up here today, so we'll take a bit of good news.
No,
we
didn't mean to.
So anyway, look, we're out of time. 9 seconds over. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks for all the questions. I hope I did them justice. Please put your hands together for the panel. Thank you very much.